he's getting better. Yesterday he shakes off a horrible first half and ends up, saving them at the end with his legs, with his arm. That pass to Goddard on the one scoring drive late in the game. That pass to he's going to make bad plays. I mean, he missed Watkins down the field. Yeah, that's what he needs to clean up. He can't. You just can't miss that kind of stuff. You can't miss Zach Ertz in the end zone last week when he was wide open. Those are the things he needs to get better at. But I think this kid's going to be a good quarterback. I think they're not going to have to go looking for a quarterback at the end of this year.
Get a victory down in Carolina against the Panthers. Jeff Kerr, Jody McDonald, joined by our good bud Paul Domowitch, who, yes, got to watch the game relaxing rather than having to go down to Carolina and get in a hotel and then get a flight back and then come up. Did you miss the trip to Carolina, Mr. Domowitch?
Charlotte's a nice town, but I don't miss any trips anymore.
Good for you, Domo. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Paul. It's a shame too because Charlotte was where I would want to have been yesterday. I'm a big NASCAR fan. They raced the playoff race at the Roval yesterday, so got to go there. Got to go to NASCAR Hall of Fame, and of course the Eagles and Carolina played. My one buddy went to the Eagles game yesterday and was like, "Hey, this is a pretty nice stadium," and he's from down south, and it's the first time he ever visited there. And I told him, I'm like, personally, being from the outside of it, it's one of the top 10 stadiums in the league.
Oh yeah, Charlotte's a great city, it really is. And I need to mention it's Les Bowen's hometown, so
I had completely forgotten that. Shame on me. We've been breaking down a bunch of things here in the first hour and change of the show. I want to get your take on a couple of them. Nick Sirianni gets a win. Needed. I agreed wholeheartedly what he said after the game. It was a team win because each and every aspect of the team contributed yesterday. But truth be told, bigger win for the defense because Jonathon Gannon had been ripped up the last couple of weeks. Granted, the level of talent that he was playing against took a little bit of a drop down yesterday. Dallas offense, Kansas City offense, Panthers offense. But he did get the job done. How much does it mean to Gannon and that room, the defense side of the ball, with the effort they put forward yesterday, Domo?
This was about as needed as water when you spent 2 weeks in the desert. That ride home for him must have been really nice after last week. I'm sure he heard a lot of as close to Nick Sirianni gets to screaming and yelling. Certainly his job wasn't on the line, but Jonathon Gannon's supposed to be, a revered defensive coordinator. And last week he was just embarrassed. So to come back, have his team bounce back with a performance like that against a team like Carolina was huge for their confidence. And, going forward, I think it'll help them a lot. Not necessarily Thursday, but going forward.
Yeah. Speaking of Thursday, I kind of jumping the gun a little bit here, but Tom Brady obviously has like the hand injury, the finger injury. He downplayed it. Bruce Arians downplayed it, but they had some interesting comments about this Eagles team saying, look, we know we can't take them lightly. We did that last year with the Bears and we lost our Thursday night game. So, is it possible the Eagles are just getting respect around the league?
Well, coaches look at this team and, they realize that offense can score against anybody. The first half yesterday being an exception, but they've got a lot of weapons. So no matter how good a defense you have, and right now Tampa Bay's got their corners are hurt. They're banged up. So they're worried about the Eagles' ability to score points on Sunday, and plus Jalen Hurts has earned some respect around the league, not only for passing but for the pressure he puts on the defense with his legs, as we saw yesterday in the second half.
Domo, Miles Sanders got a couple of screen passes thrown his way early yesterday. They went nowhere fast. No, you're just watching it on TV like the rest of it. You're not watching game film or anything else, but the screen game wasn't working. They stuck with it, and it continued not to work. Was it the Miles Sanders? Was it the quarterback laying the ball out there for him? Was it the blocking schemes? Contributed to a pretty shaky first half was the fact that the short passing game to the running back out of the backfield was not working. From what you saw, reasons to ferret out blame on this one?
Well, I mean, the screen game has been one of the positives for that offense in the first 4 games. It's been very successful. They were averaging about 9-10 yards a pass attempt on screens. I think Carolina just knew they were going to see a lot of it and basically said, you're not going to beat us that way. One of my criticisms of Nick yesterday was that he kept going to it in the first half. He just wouldn't try other things. Well, he tried other things. I mean, the quick slants were taken away. They were taken away a lot. I was kind of wondering why early on. Why aren't you running more zone reads with Hurts? Force them to spread out a little bit more, and that finally ended up being the case in the second half. I mean, that's what did it on that 2-point conversion. So their screen game is good. It's going to be one of their strengths all year. But if you don't succeed in other parts of your game, teams are just going to focus on it. They're going to bring everybody up. They're going to jump those routes, and you're not going to be able to block them. And that's what happened yesterday. So they just need to. They started to have some success in other places. The deep ball, that pass down the sidelines to Watkins, another one to Smith. So, I think it was just a matter of Carolina being aware of it and daring them to beat them someplace else.
Well, one of the things I thought was interesting about this team going into yesterday was I was surprised to see they were one of the few teams in the league with top 10 passing and rushing offense. And I know you've pointed this out. They're really good running the ball on first down. So, and a lot of this has to do with Jalen Hurts, but why doesn't this team or this coach feel they should run the ball more and set up these second and manageable situations?
Yeah. I think until yesterday, Jeff, that they view the screen game as an extension of the run game. So, while everybody rips them for not having enough runs per game, I think Nick says, well, we've got the RPO game, which he considers the run game because it's a run until it's a pass. And then you've got the screens, which are essentially, a run. I mean, every pass is going to be complete, or virtually everyone, just a matter of what you do when you get the ball to that guy in space. So, but yesterday I felt they needed to start running it because they were taking away the screens, and the run game ended up at the end being a valuable weapon. Why they didn't turn to it earlier, I don't know. And I like both Sanders and Gainwell in the run game and the pass game.
He became big play Slay yesterday. Darius Slay, since he's come over and gotten the big contract, has been a stone cold solid defender in the Eagles secondary. And even though I thought the optics of it were bad last week when he said, "Hey, I'm doing my job. I don't know what the big deal is." He just shouldn't have gone there. What he said was right. He has done a nice job in coverage. Finally became big play Slay with a couple of interceptions. Much needed. I guess that Hicks concept does work, huh, Domo? The turnover part of it did kick in.
Yeah, we're not seeing any, punching the ball out or stripping the ball for forced fumbles yet, but we're seeing, yesterday we saw some interceptions. They can get 3 a game. They can beat anybody.
Paul, I'll reiterate what Joey said. I think the secondary as a whole has been playing pretty good. Despite the injuries, and Steve Nelson's been okay, hasn't been terrible, which is good for Eagles cornerbacks, but Monte Max has been good in the slot. Overall, what are your thoughts of the secondary through 5 weeks?
You're right. I mean, the problem early on has not been the secondary. It's been the pass rush. And that changed yesterday. We saw Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat all have, nice games. I mean, Fletcher Cox finally was heard from. I mean, at some point, I thought they were going to I thought the Eagles might think about putting his picture on a milk carton. I mean, he just was invisible. I know he'll tell you, oh, double team, triple team. If you're supposed to be the second best defensive tackle in the game, play like it. And he hadn't been. Yesterday he did. Hargrave's been solid all season long. Sweat yesterday. And all of their sacks and pressures were coming on third down, which is why Carolina did not convert many third downs, along with the fact that Sam Darnold was the quarterback. So that pass rush is what changed yesterday. Their secondary's been playing pretty solid all year long. Avonte Maddox had an outstanding game yesterday. That ball he knocked away, that deep ball was just, I mean, that was just perfect timing. I mean, you watch that, you can't watch that enough. It's just, if I had a son that was a DB, I mean, I would just like watch this for about an hour. Watch how he plays it.
I agree wholeheartedly. The timing of the play in the play was great, and the timing of the play in the game was very necessary. They needed that big play there, and Avonte Maddox gave it to him. All right, speaking of big plays, we've been debating him a little bit earlier in the show. Jalen Reagor, we're now a season and 5 games into his career as a Philadelphia Eagle. He was a first-round draft pick. We understand that. Unfortunately for him, Jefferson was taken just behind him, and he continues to do what he does in Minnesota, which makes his job more difficult. But his job is his job, and we've got 22 games logged, and he hasn't made a major breakout play for me in any of them. And many games, you're like, well, what did Reagor do? Yeah, not much again. Damn, why don't – where were you at with Jalen Reagor in your evaluation of him? The Eagles are in one place, the coaching staff's in another. Give me the Paul Domowitch 22 games in evaluation of Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, I mean, right now he's their third wide receiver. He's the guy you use on those screens that didn't work yesterday. He's the guy you use on jet sweeps. Is he the guy you count on third down? No. I mean, maybe that changes, but right now, if I'm looking at go-to guys besides Dallas Goedert, it's obviously Devonta Smith and Quez Watkins. It's not Jalen Reagor. I don't know what's. I think when they did not draft him. I mean, I was like everyone else mystified that they didn't take Jefferson. I did not think that Reagor was a player that couldn't play. I just didn't think you took him ahead of Justin Jefferson. So I think I'm still there. I think Reagor will be okay. I don't think he's going to be a Pro Bowl player, which is what you're supposed to be getting when you draft that high. But they were fortunate. I mean, with a lot of guys where they miscalculated, they have been fortunate enough to be lucky on the back end with Watkins late in the draft to kind of counter the fact that Reagor hasn't panned out. It's happened with some of their offensive linemen. I mean, Dillard didn't pan out, and you got a 7th round player like Malata and another 4th round pick like Driscoll that are panning out. So, they've been fortunate that way. But Reagor is, I think, he'll be better than he's shown in these first 5 games. But I don't think he's ever going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think he's ever going to be, the go-to guy for Jalen Hurts.
Paul, I got a chance to speak to Jalen Hurts late Friday afternoon, and if I had to write a column on him, Paul Domowitch style, I probably would go with this. This guy just doesn't seem to care what people think of him, good or bad. We talked about the rat poison for about 10 minutes, what rat poison actually is, which was pretty hilarious because he was laughing about the entire thing. And, I'm thinking to myself, this guy might end up being pretty good after all.
Yeah. I've been a Hurts fan since the day they drafted him. I didn't, at the time, I mean, I know why they drafted him. It wasn't to be their number 1 quarterback necessarily, but I felt he could be. You're right about his resilience. I mean, and I think a lot of that goes to his personal experience. I mean, look what happened at Alabama. I mean, guys like, that destroys a lot of guys. He stayed there. He learned from it, soaked up everything he could from Saban before he ends up transferring. Oklahoma, he was told not to go there. I mean, he went there because Saban said, go where, the best players are. And that was Oklahoma. But, you're going into a program like that cold. It's a difficult challenge. And he stepped in there, learned the offense right away, and ended up having a Heisman, finalist type of year. So, he's getting better. Yesterday he shakes off a horrible first half and ends up, saving them at the end with his legs, with his arm. That pass to Goddard on the 1 scoring drive late in the game, that pass to I mean, he's going to make bad plays. I mean, he missed Watkins down the field. Yeah, that's what he needs to clean up. He can't. You just can't miss that kind of stuff. You can't miss Zach Ertz in the end zone last week when he was wide open. Those are the things he needs to get better at. But I mean, I think this kid's going to be a good quarterback. I think they're not going to have to go looking for a quarterback at the end of this year.
We shall see how it plays itself out. And you're right, Jalen didn't have the best of games yesterday, but he made the big plays, mostly with his feet when he needed to, when he won the game, which I think kind of outweighs everything else. But part of the reason why he didn't have his best game was the offensive line wasn't as good this week as it was last week. I know they're throwing it together on the fly, so many injuries, guys like Lane Johnson being out, personal reasons. I didn't agree with the way the Eagles aligned their line yesterday. Johnny Mack did. He even knew how they were going to do it because he got to see practice and he was told, listen, you will not be divulging how we're planning on using our offensive line. Okay, he knew he had to keep it under his hat. I think Mailata is your left tackle. And if he's back, he needs to be your left tackle, not move to the right side. He's certainly more capable of doing it than Andre Dillard is. But when you have an option of plugging in a Nate Herbig, who I thought was pretty damn good the week before, that's the way I would have gone. I would have put Mailata back in and just taken Dillard out. Instead, the Eagles did some musical chair work and Driscoll moved back inside. I didn't think he was terrible filling in for Lane Johnson last week either. I thought they could have done a better job aligning their offensive line. My partner, Johnny Mack, is a big Dillard fan, so he's stuck by Dillard. He didn't play terribly. He didn't play great. But Mailata played bad on the right side.
Yeah.
A couple of penalties, got beat back-to-back plays by Hassan Reddick. And I asked John if thought they would reevaluate coming into this week. He said, no, they'll stay exactly with what they're doing. How do you make it, Domo? They do the right thing by putting the offensive line together the way they did because we don't know when Lane Johnson is coming back.
Yeah, and that's where they've got an advantage over us, Jody. They've got to know when he's coming back or if he's coming back. The fact that they've moved Jordan over there makes me wonder about two things. One, is he coming back? And they just realize this is a long term. They've got to do this because they're looking at the rest of the season, and they can't move Dillard over there. And Dillard's played well enough to continue to be a part of this offensive line, but he can't play right tackle. So he's strictly a left tackle. And they believe Mailata, even though he had a rough time yesterday, is more versatile and can basically, settle in there at right tackle. So that makes me wonder about what's going on with Lane and whether he will be back. The other possibility is they don't want Dillard out of the lineup because the trade deadline's at the end of October, I believe.
Correct.
And mid-season. So you still want to hang out. You still want to give people a good look at him, especially if he's going to start to play well here, and so that you can get his. If Lane comes back and you want to consider trading him. So, but they suffered in the short term yesterday. I mean, I was shocked. Even though Mailata was playing a different position, he got beat really handily on those two plays. But again, almost like Hurts, the kid's resilient. I mean, he goes up to, you guys listen to the press conferences, and he goes to Hurts after Hurts is struggling and tells him, next play. An offensive lineman that hadn't played football 3 years ago is telling his quarterback this. It's a nice thing to see.
Yeah, Paul. One player. It's so hard for me to make a determination on him. He's in his fifth year now, and I've talked to my old high school coaches about that. I played defensive end in high school. I don't look good now, but college coaches. Derek Barnett gets pressure on the quarterback. He can stop the run. He makes a lot of plays, but he also does a lot of bonehead decisions. But yesterday was one of those good performances. I really don't know what to make of this guy so far.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a good player. You're right. To just make some dumb plays. He's not consistent enough for me. But he's, he can set the edge. He can rush the passer. I don't think he's going to be back because they're not going to want to, he's not worth the money. He's making $10 million this year in the option year, which, they had to think long and hard about doing. I think next year they just let him go in another direction to find help there because they're obviously going to need help. I mean, Brandon's, I'm sure, going to try to come back, but he's 34 years old. I mean, that's an area that they've got to strengthen in the off season. They're going to have a lot of ways to do it. They're going to have a lot of draft picks. If they don't need a quarterback, you probably see them go after one of the top edge rushers in the draft. They're going to have a lot of money and space with Wentz off the books and the cap going through the roof, so that they can get any free agent out there they want. So it's going to be an important off season for them to restructure that defensive line.
Along those lines, Domo, you mentioned the trade deadline, which is 3 weeks from tomorrow. November 2nd is the actual trade deadline. Let's say the Eagles win 2 out of their next 3 games. Yeah, they get beat by Tampa, but then they win their next 2 games, which are both winnable. They'll probably be underdogs in both, but they find a way to win. And we're sitting here, and the Eagles are all of a sudden 4-4 after 8. They're at the trade deadline. Are they trading Andre Dillard for a draft pick? That's a possibility, which if you do that, then you're certainly not helping this year's team in addition of a draft pick. Or are they actually trying to add a piece, like maybe an extra defensive end? You guys are higher on Barnett than I am. I'm done with him. I've moved on from him. He's like Vincent Velasquez for me. At some point, no matter how long you try and say, give the guy a shot, give the guy, he flashes. Oh, he flashed for me. Give him another shot. No, I moved on from Vince Velasquez. I've moved on from Barnett too. You're right, Domo, when you say they need more defensive end. Who knows when Brandon Graham comes back at? What if somebody's available at the defensive end position who's got another year to go on his contract? Yeah. Could the Eagles actually be buyers at the trade deadline?
Well, they don't have a lot of cap flexibility, so that would
Domo, as a matter of fact, they're number 2 in the NFL with cap space as of right now. Now, Howie Roseman has mortgaged the future. He's got Fletcher Cox. If they ever want to move away from Fletcher Cox, they'll be screwed like they're screwed with Carson Wentz this year. Howie's done a lot of pushing money into the future. They have flexibility this year. They could add somebody if they wanted to.
Yeah. It's not going to be a veteran, an older guy. If they can somehow find a younger guy that's available that they really are high on, let's say they're 4-4 at the end of October. I think they realize now the NFC East is not winnable. The Cowboys aren't going to do what the Cowboys usually do. So, I mean, right now they're one of the best teams in the league. In my mind, they're one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the league. And I don't think that's going to change unless they are just devastated by injuries, which would mean the quarterback going down and maybe one of their wide receivers. So that's where they're going to have to make the buy or sell decision. Can they win a wild card spot? Look around the league. I don't think that's realistic. I mean, I had them pegged for an 8-9 season, which I thought was pretty good considering where they're coming from and where they want to go. They're kind of caught in that spot where you don't know whether you want to be a buyer or a seller. You don't want to mortgage the future. But if somebody's out there that you can get on the cheap that you maybe like better than most people, you do it. I don't think they'd give Dillard away unless they get a really good price, and I doubt that's going to happen. Somebody would have to be in a situation where, they're a playoff team whose left tackle just went down the week before, 2 weeks before, and they just need help right away. And, that situation happened, several years ago when that's how they got the great deal for Sam Bradford. Could it happen again? Sure. Will it? Probably not. So if you were asking me, I'd say Dillard's going to be on this roster long-term.
Paul, one of the reasons I'll stick up for Howie Roseman from time to time, and we know his draft history is not great, but one of the reasons I feel he keeps his job here, besides his close relationship with Jeffrey Lurie, is he just seems to finagle people in trades. And, everybody likes to mention Jannard Avery. Well, I think it's a pretty good gamble right now what he did with the Dolphins. And the Dolphins look like they're going to get a top 5 pick. At the very best, the top 10. They look awful. The Colts, you kind of want them to stay around, obviously, with the snap count thing, but they don't look good.
No.
It's very possible the Eagles' highest pick in the draft may be their own. You got to give Howie Roseman credit for this stuff, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And he's got a few go-to places, just like Jalen's got some go-to receivers. Howie's got some go-to teams when he wants to make a trade and make a trade that can really help him. Miami's one of those spots. I mean, you look at several of the deals they've made over the last several years with the Dolphins going, the trade up in the first round. I mean, you go all the way back to when they traded away Kiko Alonso and Byron Maxwell to trade up to get Carson Wentz. So he's done a good. He runs hot and cold. I mean, you go back to. I mean, the reason he was executive of the year in 2017 was because everything he touched turned to gold. I mean, every move he made in the offseason, free agency wise, solidified that Super Bowl team. I mean, Patrick Robinson. You can go down the list of guys that ended up being important role players in that Super Bowl winning team. And he gets the credit for that. And then he goes and has just some horrific drafts. So, everybody, nobody's perfect in the talent evaluation process. He doesn't get much of the benefit of the doubt because he's a non-football guy, and people look at him and say he never played the game, which he hasn't. But there's a lot of great talent evaluators that didn't play the game. And I'm not defending how he's made a lot of bad moves. He needs to be second guessed for a lot of them. I'm just saying that he's not a complete idiot. He's made a lot of good moves, including this year.
And as I noted earlier, I looked it up on Over the Cap. Eagles number 2 with cap space in the NFL. Jags have $30 million available. Eagles at 16.5. Broncos 16.1 and third. How he did that, I don't know. Other than I know he's got bad deals going on down the road and extended money and disposable years and the like. But he is in a pretty good spot if he wanted to add something. That's why I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about that 3 weeks from now when the trade deadline comes up. All right, national topic. I want to get your take on it too, Domo, because I know you follow the whole league. Yesterday, watching the Eagles, if I'm not watching a play, I go to the red zone. They're in commercial, watch a couple things. Go back if I miss a play. It's on DVR, so it's no big deal. Every time I turned in the red zone, the guy Scotty Hansen was saying, and they missed an extra point. I actually thought they were going to have an extra point zone channel yesterday. 12 missed PATs in the NFL. It absolutely had an impact on the games and the way the games were played and the like. Do you think the NFL is going to revisit that, Domo? 10 years ago, whatever it was, when they pushed it back from the stone cold given 10 yards out, 20-yard kick, everybody made 96% of the kicks. Not so much anymore. Is it a good thing or a bad thing for football?
No, I think it's a good thing. I mean, anytime you don't have a gimme play, it's a good thing. It's the same thing now with kickoff returns. I mean, touchbacks are happening 90% of the time now. Fox has decided sometimes to not even show it. I mean, they're still in commercial break, and they came back yesterday for a couple of times, and it was the Eagles had the ball on the 25-yard line because they're just gambling that we can make money on the commercial and nobody's going to return it for a touchdown. What's weird, Jody, is I think there may be more 50-yard field goals than ever before this year as well. So I mean, kickers have stronger legs than ever, and yet, like you said, I mean, so many missed extra points. But I like it. I don't like anything that's just a gimme. It adds some uncertainty to the situation and makes it. It also creates motivation to go for two. I don't know. I haven't checked the numbers to see if that's happening at a greater rate, but it should.
Paul, I gotta get your take on the taunting penalties here. I think some of these have been absolutely ridiculous. And then I go see Ezekiel Elliott high step his way into the end zone. I'm like, well, isn't that the definition of taunting? But they let that go, and I'm just thinking to myself, well, what is taunting now? Like, why can't you just let these guys have some fun?
It's what everybody wants to know. It's a weird deal because the players don't like it. The officials don't even like it. The coaches don't like it. The only people that seem to like it are the people in the Manhattan offices of the NFL. The officials don't like it because it's just so difficult to call. It's kind of like targeting. It just makes their job harder. I think eventually, it'll be discussed during the offseason, the taunting rule. I think it'll probably get eliminated either this year or next year.
All right, Domo, you mentioned you think the Cowboys wanted a 2 or 3, 3 or 4. I apologize for not remembering exactly. I'd like to quote you exactly. Did you say top 2 or 3 or top 3 or 4?
Top 3 or 4 right now.
3 or 4. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have them near that high. Certainly, I've got the Bills off what they did last night that high. Chargers are getting a whole lot of love over in the AFC. You got the Rams in the NFC, which people are singing their praises because of Matthew Stafford. And then there's the only undefeated team, the Arizona Cardinals, who, for my money, still aren't getting the respect they deserve because there's one undefeated team. The Miami Dolphins from the 70s have not had a chance to crack the champagne yet because of the Arizona Cardinals. Not anybody else are the Cardinals being underappreciated for what they've achieved in the first 5 games.
They are. And you know what? I'm guilty of that, not because I don't believe they're as good as they're playing, because now they have a defense. I mean, they've done an outstanding job of turning that team into a complete team. Steve Keim has just done a marvelous job of improving it. He's gotten Kyler Murray receivers. He's got AJ Green on one side, DeAndre Hopkins on the other. You've got running backs that can catch and run. It's going to be. I mean, they're going to be there at the end. But I do power rankings for the 33rdteam.com. And, a couple of weeks back, I'm still like, well, they still have to prove themselves. So I had them at like 4th or 5th. And the people I have in front of them just aren't doing anything to make, to feel like you got to replace them. I mean, Tampa Bay is still is still the number 1 team on my list. You've got I believe the Cowboys are 3. I've got the Bills at 2. So, but I think the Cardinals. I mean, right now, I think they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I mean, other years you wonder, are they a flash in the pan? Is Kyler Murray really that good a quarterback? He is. You see a lot of Jalen Hurts in him. He's a more instinctive player than Jalen as far as getting away from a rush. That's where another thing Jalen needs to work at. But I mean, just having that quarterback with that kind of mobility just changes your offense so much.
Speaking of the Cardinals, our old friend Jordan Hicks, I covered a lot of this during the summer. He looked dead in the water. If I would have bet the house on 2 things. Probably the Cardinals win the NFC West because I was a big believer. And Jordan Hicks was going to go somewhere. He was going to play Arizona's uniform. Not only was he named the captain, he's probably one of their best defensive players. It's just incredible what that defense has done through 5 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, Hicks, there was never any question about his ability. It was just whether he could stay healthy. He couldn't here. He can now. And if he stays healthy, he's not only a great player, but he's, like you said, he's a team captain. He's a great leader.
Damo, last thing, and I'll apologize in advance for asking this question. And again, my bad. And I apologize to Clark Judge last week because I should have given him a heads up. And I meant to do this with you again when I texted you and said, will you come on the show? And I forgot. So it's all on me, but I'm going to put you in a tough spot anyway. We asked Clark when we had him on last week, one of your fellow Hall of Fame voters, what he thought about Shady McCoy's Hall of Fame status. Because they brought Shady back, retired as an Eagle, had the ceremony last week. Good stuff. Good for Shady. Good for the Eagles. I have my opinion on whether Shady is a Hall of Fame back. Yours is much more important because you got to vote. And chances are they'll ask you to make the speech for Shady McCoy because according to Shady, he's an Eagle. Even though he got a Super Bowl ring with Tampa, even though he got a Super Bowl ring with Kansas City, even though he had some really good years with Buffalo, they'll probably say, Domowitch, you got to make the speech. You got to make the case if we're going to elect Shady as a Hall of Famer if he gets that far, which I think he will, because I think he's a borderline guy. I think he deserves to be presented by you or whoever else. I think he deserves consideration. I think he'll get past the opening stages. But I don't know that I could cast my vote for him as a Hall of Famer. I don't know if you've given it any thought. You're as good as you are at what you do, so you probably have. So I probably didn't need to apologize in advance, but I did. And if I have to, I apologize again. Give us your take, Shady McCoy, Hall of Famer.
Well, I have thought about it. I wrote about it last week for the 33rdteam.com. Let me preface this by saying, I mean, while I I'm the Philadelphia representative on the Hall of Fame selection committee. I don't necessarily, if I don't believe a guy's, if a guy makes the final 15 and and he's an Eagle and I don't believe he belongs in the Hall of Fame, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I've always felt that way and made it clear in several times when I've written stories when I was with the Inquirer about Donovan McNabb. If he ever made it, which to the final 15, I'd have to be honest and say I don't think he belongs in. With Shady, I think he belongs in. I'll tell you why. His numbers are right now the two people that are going to get in before him that are of this generation are Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson. Both have better numbers as far as rushing, as far as yards from scrimmage, as far as overall touchdowns. So I think, both Gore and Peterson and Shady all are going to be eligible about 2026, and those two will be the first two in. I mean, Gore's like the third leading rusher in NFL history. Shady's probably a better player, but Gore's Gore. I mean, he's put up the numbers and he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Shady's numbers, when you look at them and when you look at other things, the two-time All-Pro, the leading the league in rushing, which Gore never did. And Peterson's a different case. Peterson's a slam dunk, but I think Gore will be too. I think Shady's going to have to wait a few years probably because, when you look at the pattern, and I have of it's usually one running back, no more than one running back a year, sometimes one every 2 years. There's only been 1 year since 1990 that two running backs have gotten in. That was when Terrell Davis and wasn't that long ago got in. So, he's going to have to wait a little bit, but I think Shady will get in the Hall of Fame. And I think, honestly, when I look at his numbers, and I had a chance to, and I talked to Vic Carucci about this, who's another Hall of Fame selector who's from Buffalo, watched him play after he left Philadelphia. And he's also strongly believes, and he saw a Shady that had been run down by Chip Kelly. I mean, 300 carry seasons. It wasn't the same Shady that went to Buffalo that was playing in Philadelphia. So, and he still believes what he saw there was a Hall of Fame player. So, I believe Shady belongs in the Hall of Fame. It's just that he's going to have to wait longer than Gore and Peterson.
Domo, good stuff. And I guess you can call me the Hall of Fame Grinch because I don't think Frank Gore is a Hall of Famer either. I think Peterson's the only one out of those three who actually deserves to get in, but that's why they don't invite me to vote. That's why they have guys like you vote, because you're
a baseball guy. And the difference is the Football Hall of Fame is not the Baseball Hall of Fame.
It's definitely
there's a different criteria. You're a little bit more open to letting people in. I mean, every year there's the maximum 5 that get in. Baseball's, there are years when nobody gets in. So
a little bit tougher on both, but I like the differences between both the baseball and the Football Hall of Fame. That's kind of what makes it fun. Dom, it's always fun to talk to you. We will get you back on about a month from now. Thanks for hopping on with us today. Have a good month, buddy.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Paul Domowitch here with us on Birds 365. All right. Yeah. Sorry. I just think Shady's close, but on the outside looking in. Same thing for Frank Gore. I actually usually defend compilers, guys who put up big numbers by staying around. And I think there's something to be said for staying around. If you can continue to stay around and not get cut and still make plays and still get yards, even if they're not mega important yards, usually that's pretty important. It's just something about Frank Gore that, I know what he did, but he just never did it for a great thing. You think Gore's a Hall of Fame back, Jeff Kerr?
Well, I look at it this way. I was watching baseball playoffs the other day, and Nelson Cruz is still rocking for Tampa. And I started thinking to myself, I'm going to look up his numbers. I'm like, is Nelson Cruz a Hall of Famer? I don't know. And Frank Gore, I think he is just because I look at Frank Gore this way. After 30, he is far and away the most productive running back in NFL history. And I think that's ultimately what's going to get him in.
And who knows? Maybe he'll sign on with a team for the home stretch because he never seems to go away. He's always coming back. Maybe he's got one more comeback in him. All right, he's Jeff Carr. I'm Jody McDonald. We're running late. Come back, put a bow on the show here on Bird.